I'm Apostle Michael Patton. I am the president of your local South Bend NAACP. Our board of directors are delighted to be here on today to be a part of this city town hall gathering. And we want to be engaged, and we are involved in every aspect of the meaning of that we have our hands in the process of what's taking place, and we're looking forward to creating solutions and being a part of bringing healing to our community as well. We also have with us Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Would you give him a round of applause as he's joined us? As well, we have our Chief of Police, Chief Scott Rakowski. Would you give him a round of applause? I saw also many of the council members. They are present. If you will stand wherever you are, we would appreciate that. They are front and center. Thank you as well. And there are many other community leaders. Let me recognize the pastors in the community, the faith community. If you would stand, if you are a pastor in this community, please stand with me. We solicit your prayers, pastors, and as well all of the people of God as we're walking through the process of this gathering as well. We certainly solicit the prayers of those that are present. We're now going to ask Mayor Pete Buttigieg to come and as well give us an overview.
Thank you, and thank you to Apostle Patton for hosting and moderating. Thank you to Washington High School for having us. Thank you to everybody for caring enough to be part of this. We are here for several reasons. We're here first and foremost because the city is hurting, because the city is in pain, because someone among our number died at the hands of another person in this city. We're here to share information, we're here to respond to questions, and we're here to make progress. Not because we think we can solve everything here or solve everything at all, but because we know that we'll be one step closer if people have the right information and if people are heard. A couple things I should admit that I cannot speak to today. First of all, I cannot speak to whether any of the actions on Sunday by Mr. Logan or by any of the officers involved were legal or illegal, because that is being investigated separately. Similarly, I cannot speak to whether any actions by any officers at that time were in accordance with policy or against policy, because that is going to be reviewed in a separate investigation. Those investigations have to be impartial and just and transparent. I will do nothing to prejudice them. I will say that we will deal with the findings when they come. I know how much concern there is in this city over the police-involved shooting that happened last Sunday. There's also a lot of concern around this city over the loss of life that took place early this morning in our city. 10 people were shot. At least one life has been lost. Every time a civilian dies at the hands of an officer, every time a civilian dies at the hands of another civilian, and any time an officer comes to harm at the hands of a civilian, they are all disasters. There's a disaster for the family every single time. We were actually on track as a city to have less shootings than last year, and last year had less shootings than the year before. I don't know if that's true. Certainly not true as of this moment. We can't bring that number down without all of us doing something about that. And I know this is part of that. We're bringing together people who care about safety and justice and believe that we can and must have both. I want to share very briefly the process that is going on. There will be more to discuss as the questions come in. That there is one process for reviewing whether any laws were broken on Sunday. That is in the hands of the Metro Homicide Unit. That another process will take place, that is for whether any discipline of any officer is called for. That will be in the hands of the department and will then go to the Board of Safety. I've heard the community express two things about the process that I just want to make clear right away where our administration is. The first is a desire for an outside look at what has taken place here by the U.S. Department of Justice. I recognize that request. I respect it. I will send a letter to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division expressing that the city agrees. I cannot promise that they will act on it. Secondly, the community has expressed concern about the review underway by Metro Homicide. Because even though it is separate from the South Bend Police Department, it of course involves local law enforcement. Some in the community have asked for an independent investigator to be appointed by the prosecutor to take over. And I want to let you know that I agree with this recommendation as well, and that I notified the prosecutor that I would like for him to take that step. It is his decision, but I have let him know that I would like for that to happen and shared some of the reasons why. We're not only here because of what happened Sunday, even though that is obviously what has brought us to this point. There is a lot beneath the surface when it comes to trust and legitimacy around policing and race in our city. There's a lot of things we've done, and I just want to make sure I've named them. The institution of bias training, civil rights training, community policing efforts that have been going on for years, transparency online, and if you're not familiar with it, I would urge you to consult the South Bend Police Transparency Hub online. It's a website with information, policies, data. And if anyone has any suggestions about additional data sets to add, those will be taken seriously. We've acted to have a more professional promotions process and to raise discipline standards, which, as you may know, have included officers being removed from the force for misconduct. We've also taken efforts for diversity recruiting to make sure that the department resembles the community it serves and is more diverse, and have implemented body cameras. As the mayor of the city, I want to acknowledge that those last two lines of effort, the effort to recruit more minority officers to the police department and the effort to introduce body cameras, have not succeeded, and I accept responsibility for that. We have tried but not succeeded to increase diversity in the police department, and we need help. And while body cameras were implemented across the department, obviously there is enormous frustration, which I share, that they were not there when we needed them most. And there will be action on that too. So I'll keep this brief so we can get to the questions. I just want you to know that we're not running from this. We're going to have a conversation that I hope will be respectful. I hope that everyone who speaks may speak without interruption. And I hope that, I know that people aren't going to walk out of this room satisfied. I understand that. We are here to have tough conversations. But I want everyone here at least to be empowered, and I want to make sure voices are heard. That's why we're here. And so I'm going to stop talking and go over there. Our moderator will ask some questions, and then we will move to audience questions after that. And again, I thank you for being here, and I thank everyone who is here to respectfully participate in this conversation.
Thank you, Mayor Pete, for giving us the overview. I want to ask that we would be respectful to this process. We have a lot of information and content to share, and so as we respect you from this area, please respect us as well. We're going to do our very best to get your questions answered and share information with you that I believe will be empowering on today. And so let's walk in love one towards another. Can you look at your neighbor and say, let's walk in love one to another? Thank you so much. I appreciate the respect that you're giving me at this time. The Bible says love never fails, and love will cover a multitude of sin. And so let's walk in love one to another so that we can have a healthy engagement. This is a time that we can communicate one to another. We're all hurting, including myself. You feeling me? We're all hurting, including myself. I've got questions myself that need to be answered. And I'm here to help facilitate those questions that we have pre-made, and then those questions that will come from the audience. And so we're looking forward to your participation as well. As the NAAC president, I think it's important for you all to know that we are an advocacy organization, and we are at the table because we believe in fair and equitable processes. And we're believing that justice will come out of this as you give us time through the process. I'm emphasizing that for a reason, because nothing's going to happen in the next 36 hours. But there's a process to this, and we want to give it time to unfold so that we can address the challenges that are before us. All right, with that being said, let's get started with the questions to our mayor and to our chief of police. First question is, what happens after an officer involved shooting? Chief Scott?
Well, that's kind of a vague question, but from the scene itself, Metro Homicide is immediately called. They come to the scene and we relinquish the scene. Those officers that are on scene, whoever the commanders or supervisors are, relinquish that scene to Metro Homicide. Metro Homicide does what they do with any other investigation, which is to transport witnesses down and whoever may be involved and take statements at the Metro Homicide unit. Immediately, our South Bend officers, unless they're involved in an actual incident, will not be part of the investigation. Metro Homicide, it's Mishawaka and St. Joe County officers would be involved in that investigation and not South Bend. The process with from the investigator's perspective is self-explanatory, where they would go and give statements and they would ask questions, et cetera. But the evidentiary portion would be on those crime scene technicians that would go out there and process the scene, whatever that scene may be. And from that point on, it's an actual scene that we would do, not the South Bend Police Department, but they would do, but we would process similar any crime scene that we would have. So it is treated as a crime scene from that perspective. Once that is done, all the statements, all the evidence, all the facts are obtained. That is presented to the prosecutor. The prosecutor then makes a decision on whatever that result may be. We do not have consultation with the prosecutor, and whatever his decision is what his decision is. That information, facts, evidence, statements, et cetera, is handed over to us afterward. We internally compare all those facts, evidence, statements, et cetera, to our internal policies, but we still ask other questions on top of that. There's a difference. There's Miranda when the officers are down talking to Metro Homicide. That's involved, which means the right to remain silent and all of those things. On the police department side, that is not the case. You are compelled to give testimony regarding policies and procedures about our policies and procedures. If you refuse to do so, then you can be terminated. I'm sorry, from that point, then a recommendation is made based on those policies and procedures, and it is written out, and we present that. I do make a recommendation to the board based on any violations of any or all of those policies and procedures that may come into play. That goes to the Board of Safety, and the Board of Safety would make the ultimate decision based on my recommendation. They can agree with my recommendation, or they can exceed my recommendation, but it's based on a period of time of that recommendation. For example, a letter of reprimand all the way to termination every time goes to the Board of Safety, so they review that. However, a letter of reprimand up to 5 days does not require a hearing. the board is still notified, and the board still obviously looks on that, and they put signatures on that. The officer can still ask for a hearing, even within that letter of reprimand to 5 days, and the board could, if they wanted to, have a hearing, but that's the board's decision. I do not have an influence. It's only a recommendation from my part, meaning the South Bend Police Department, to the board. Anything 6 days and over, whether or not the officer asks, the board gets to decide whether they have a hearing or not, or rely on my recommendation.
And I think these materials have been circulated. Does everybody have some paper that's gone around? So, okay, we'll try to circulate more copies if we run out. One of them is a flow chart explaining what Chief just described. I know it's a little confusing. The second is the state law. Just want to make sure this is well understood. The procedure for an officer being disciplined or terminated is set in the state law, and it sets that the Board of Safety has that authority. You can sort of think of it like a trial. So in the same way that if you or I were accused of a crime, there would then be a process in court. If an officer is accused of misconduct, there is a process before the board, which then makes a decision about discipline or termination.
Thank you, gentlemen. Question for you as well. We understand you get it, you're a part of the process, but it's still a little hairy to me, and I'm sure to our audience. What does that look like? Are we talking 30 days? Are we talking 12 months? Is this a 24-month period? Can you share that with us?
Yes, thank you, Apostle. I'm glad you brought that up. There still is a contractual obligation with the police department via the Board of Safety and via the Common Council that the FOP, which is essentially a union within the police department, these are members that they have a contractual agreement with our city of what things take, and these are like days off, working hours, things of that nature. They're working conditions essentially, but within them there are things like their Bill of Rights, and there's things that they have through contract negotiations came up with, and an agreement with everybody within the city. So a minimum of an investigation is 60 days. However, we've strived to have it done within, all investigations done within 30 days, but that's based on circumstances, based on evidence, based on severity, based on many things. Now, contractually, we have to have an investigation done no more than 60 days, unless there's extenuating circumstances. Then I would have to notify the officer and city legal and everyone else of the reasons for those extensions, and they have to be legitimate reasons for those extensions.
Please, would you respect the process? I've asked you to respect the process. We're walking in love one towards another. Have I yelled at you? I would not want you to yell at me. Let's quieten the anxiety. Please, ma'am, let's quieten the anxiety. Thank you so much. All right, here we are. Let's talk about where we are in the process of the investigation. And so, Chief Scott, if you'll begin with that process, and then Mayor Pete, if you will then as well add into that. Where are we in the process of this investigation?
Right now, to my understanding, Metro Homicide is still doing whatever they are with facts and evidence. I don't know if it's been presented to the prosecutor for his review yet. I have no knowledge of that, and I certainly don't want to speak on behalf of the prosecutor. I can only speculate, maybe waiting on results or fingerprint comparisons or DNA or things of that nature. Again, that's only my speculation. I don't know in that process, and again, I don't want to speak for the prosecutor.
Let me say this. You have an idea of some things that have happened thus far. The prosecutor came out on Monday and explained some things to us. So we know that we've gotten that first little bit of information, but we also recognize there's more to come. Can you address that so that people understand not so much, I guess, exactly where we are in the process, but there has been some information shared?
Yeah, would it be accurate, Chief, to say that in the past these things have taken in the days to few weeks time frame?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the one thing I would mention is, of course, if it gets referred to an outside prosecutor, that will add to the amount of time. But I think my sense is that that would be worth accepting that.
Okay. Got it. Thank you for your answers. So how does the police department know if cameras are being used in accordance to police regulation? As I pose that question, it's obvious our audience is aware that cameras were not used on Sunday, June 16th. It sounds as though the officer who fired his weapon did not have his camera on, and as well, possibly those who came to support that shooting as well may not have had their cameras on. Can the two of you address that? When is it that cameras are supposed to be used and based upon the police regulation?
So let me start, and I've received a lot of questions and text and everything from people. One thing I want to clarify, Apostle, is people kept asking me what should meant in the policy. And should means you will turn the camera on unless you have a compelling reason not to.
Okay.
So to that part first. To the second part, or the first part of your question is, the second part of your, or the first part of your
Yes.
question is,
Please,
please,
we're trying to be informed.
every pursuit, every use of force.
We are. Please, let's walk in love one to another. We're walking the process out. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're walking the process out. So, Chief, would you continue on?
Every pursuit, every use of force is reviewed, just not from the officers involved, like a pursuit, for example. If somebody's involved in a pursuit, we don't just look at the vehicles, the squad cars, or the actions of the officers, camera or car, that were involved in the pursuit.
Sure.
But even those responding to the pursuit, and maybe could be on the other side of town or whatever, we review
Sure.
them as well. The same thing with use of force.
If I could add, the text of the policy is on that police website, the Transparency Hub that I mentioned. So if anybody wants to read the words of the policy. So the policy was developed based on a best practice group called Lexipol. And I also want to mention the chief at my request put out a general order last week reminding officers of our expectation that the camera is operating during any interaction with a civilian in the course of work. And I want to make clear that in the view of the administration, that is not a change in policy. That is a statement of our understanding of the policy. As with any policy, if there's a determination that any officer did not follow the policy, then that would be subject to a disciplinary process.
All right. Thank you so much for the responses to that question as well. So what action is taken when this procedure is not followed? In other words, where is the accountability here? Chief?
So again, it depends on circumstances of officers, and we've had occasions where officers have left the cameras rolling the entire time, even when they're using facilities. If there's an issue and we're made aware of it,
Sure.
we look into that. Absolutely. So if it's a first offense, for example, it could be counseling, performance improvement plan. It could be verbal reprimand, or it could be up to a letter or higher to the Board of Safety, again, based on the severity and the reasons that it was not, is a compelling reason why they were not turned on.
So we're going to have a question and answer time for the audience, please. We're going to get there. Just let us walk through the process, please. I appreciate it. So, when there's nothing, so when something doesn't occur in regards to those cameras being turned on, there's nothing in place that lets you or the supervisors know that the cameras are being operated on a daily basis.
Absolutely is. Again, every pursuit, every use of force, it needs to be reviewed multiple have been turned on. That we do professionals our internal affairs also reviews those.
Sure. All right. Pete, would you like to articulate to that question?
privacy. Showing up on a sexual assault is one example. But it's also the case that we can and should look at this policy and see if the lines have been drawn in the right way.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for your responses. Next question. Who can fire a police officer?
So that's the Board of Public Safety. And I want to make sure this is understood. This is important. Under Indiana law, the chief cannot fire a police officer. Under Indiana law, the mayor cannot fire a police officer. Here's how, for any reason. May I? Is it all right if I finish? So here's how an officer may be removed from misconduct. The chief's determination that that ought to happen. That before the Board of Safety. That consists of 5 individuals, civilians who are appointed. Of board.
Let's be respectful of the mayor's time. Thank you. The mayor has taken a moment out of his schedule to come and listen and to, let's be respectful, and to share with you the process of how our city government operates. So please, let's be respectful. Mayor Pete, yes. Okay. Sure. So let's, one last question for Mayor Pete and Chief Scott. How will you keep the community informed in regards to this process? How will we do that moving forward?
Sure, you can start and then I'll.
So it's a very difficult process to do, to even conceive, because again, when it comes to law, legalities, contract, it's difficult to give information out. However, and I've heard this, and I'm glad you mentioned this, when officers say that they were wrongly never left the place.
Sure.
Those cannot be released except for court order or subpoena, or if the officer, any officer, so say for example an officer left the police department and they say how they were wrongly done, and I'm just giving an example, have that officer give me permission in writing to release their internal affairs file, and you can look at them.
Okay. Mayor Pete.
So
let's allow for our mayor now to answer the question. Thank you so much.
So our intention will be to release as much information as we legally can as quickly as possible. So, as you know, there are moments, for example, during the investigation right now, where pieces of evidence are on the review.
Part. There will be someone with a mic. I'm looking to see where that's going to be. Who's going to handle the mic for questions, or are we allowing them to come to the stage? a mic for questions and answers. Yeah. Are we wanting them to come, Laura, to the stage? There should be a microphone in the audience.
Microphone will come to you.
No. Do we have one in the audience?
Say again? Okay. A microphone will come to you.
Thank you for your patience. A mic is now coming. Let me say as well that we do have the National Action has joined us as well. Reverend Al Sharpton and his team is here on tonight, and so we're appreciative to their presence as well. They are coming with a mic, and we are still awaiting the mic so that each individual who wants to ask questions will be able to as well articulate themselves. Here we go. All right, we now have the mic, and
let me thank everyone for your presence. And I hear the uproar and the pain. I'm getting ready to introduce myself. My name is Pastor Carlton Lynch. I serve with Reverend Al Sharpton, National Action Network. So here, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. All we're coming to do.
Okay. Let's give him a moment to share. Let's give him a moment. Okay. Okay, so hold on. Let's give him a moment. Just stand still for me. Just stand here. Just stand here. Real quick. We'll give him a moment. Please, that's please. Excuse me.
I tried to set a town hall up 3 years ago. I tried to set a town. Look, I want to let everybody know something. I personally tried to set a town hall 3 years ago. Between the community reached out to the police. We got to bridge this gap between the police and the community. I personally, you remember that?
Yes, sir.
I personally, you remember that? 3 days before, I set up the moderator.
Okay. I'll figure out some time.
Hold up.
Hey, sir. Let me call If everyone can just, we're going to allow him to speak if
After the Franklin case got decided 3 years ago, I personally decided, I said, let's reach out to, the community needs to reach out to the police department and bridge this gap. And I proposed a cookout in a town hall meeting. Went, set everything up, made flyers, talked to them, got commitment from everybody that was going to be there, talked to the city, set up the moderator, the panel, everything. 3 days before that, they canceled. Hold up. 3 days before that, they canceled. In the meantime, Aaron Neckwood jumps on somebody out of Notre Dame, a Notre Dame student, but that has nothing, we'll work on that later. 6 weeks later, they come up with their own town hall out at the craft center that we have. Now all of a sudden, it's their narrative. They want to reach out to the community and try to do this. That's what they told us that. It's not about me personally. I'm not mad about me personally didn't get my ideas stolen. It's the fact that the community reached out. They keep begging for us to reach out and bridge this gap or whatever else, and we reached out to them, and they said no. That's right.
Thank you. Pastor Matt, if you would finish, and then we'll take the next person.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sherry Peets, and I serve as the Director of Community Outreach. I thank you for coming here today. This is my alma mater. This is my home. So if we can allow us to come to you, to put the mic to you, so that way it's a safe and productive conversation. I would greatly appreciate that, if that's okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sherry.
And also, if I may, because I know we have a lot of questions, and we want to make sure we get to those questions and get to a place where people can share their grievances. What up, Lou? If we can do 2 minutes, if that's possible, because we want to make sure that people get a chance to have their voice heard and give us a space to listen. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. I want to say something. I know we all are angry. Listen. Please listen. You don't have to agree with me. Just listen. Let's hold our anger. Ask the question. Okay. 2017. Wait a minute. I want to talk.
Now someone else is talking. We will give you an opportunity to talk if you wait your turn. Thank you so much. Thank you. Samuel Brown, is you finished? Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We're going to take a moment and we're going to listen. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Let me do this before we move on. Let's have a word of prayer. Will you bow your heads with me? Bow your heads, please. Father, in the name of Jesus, we ask now, God, for your peace to be in this place. Settle anxiety, oh God, and help us to process the information to be respectful one to another. We thank you for your presence and for the respect that the people shall give unto you. In Christ's name, amen.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We're going to go ahead and let Mr. Brown continue with this question, and then we'll go to the next young lady right over here, if we may.
Okay. Look. The chief of police, the mayor came out to listen to us. They didn't come out to hear scream and complain. Everybody just calm down. We can listen and talk. 2017, all we did was frustrated you all. But you know what I did? I didn't scream at the mayor, I didn't scream at the chief of cops. I went. They got a Citizen Police Academy. I don't want to be a policeman, but I want you to know what they go through. That's how we can deal with them. They're human beings like we are. There's things that need to be changed. We're going to get it done, just like you coming here tonight. We're going to get it done. We're not going to get it done. But give them a chance to listen to our complaints. Don't scream at them. When I went through the 8 weeks of training at the South Bend Community Police Academy, I understood a lot. I have Paul Wachowski, when things in the community were going haywire. He came personally. He didn't send nobody. He came personally. Give him a chance. Pete Buttigieg is a good mayor. Give him a chance. Give him a chance. Give him a chance. I'm frustrated about the black lives, black on black. I'm frustrated. You're killing each other. You're killing each other. But guess what? We're going to get this fixed and we give them a chance.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I got it. I can hold it myself. I appreciate you. I don't understand how you expect anyone to talk about respect in an oppressed society. What is respect in an oppressed society? How can you blame the victims of last night in an oppressed society? So what you can do today, and I'm not playing, and I got 2 minutes. What you can do today, there are ways to assess the way people think. Do you understand? Get the people that are racist off the streets. Reorganize your department. You can do that by Friday. Please let me calm down because I need you to hear me. You can do this by Friday of next week, this week, whatever. You can assess by giving each one of your people in your department 500, 600, whoever, an inventory. You will get data back. Anybody in denial or polarization gets off the streets. Intercultural development inventory. If you don't want me to do it because I am a qualified administrator, if you don't want me to do it, Dr. Mitch Hammer is the person that created the scientific tool that he has used in police departments. Reorganize your department by Friday of next week and based on data, get the racists off the streets. It's disrespectful that I wake up every day scared. It's disrespectful that I have 3 boys out at the streets today. What to do? Get them off the streets. Any racist is at the damn desk. Put them at the desk. Make them do paperwork. Put the people that care about the fact that you're different than me, honey, I love your hair. Make them the ones out there on the streets.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. May I respond to that for just a second?
Thank you. Yes. Yes, Mayor.
Let me respond to that. You might stay around just while I'm responding. You go back to your seat? Okay.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you for that. And I appreciate that what you said is specific and actionable and constructive. I will say that if anyone who is on patrol is shown to be a racist or to do something racist in a way that is substantiated, that is their last day on the street. And I would love to be able to finish. I would love to be able to finish my reply if that's okay. I would appreciate being able to finish my reply. I believe you have described a specific tool that can be used in order to identify indications of racism. It is not familiar to me, and so I thank you for bringing it up, and I will research it right away.